Alright, so for this podcast, we're going to be learning on writing linear equations in standard form. Okay? And you've seen a lot of equations in standard form, but now we're giving it a name. And all along, we've been taking things out of standard form. Now we're going to learn how to put it into standard form. Okay? So, what standard form looks like is this. Well, before we even go to that, so remember, this is the third way. Our first formula that we learned is slope-intercept. Y equals mx plus b, right? That's the best way to look at a line. That's when we have the slope and the intercept. The second way you learned this chapter was point slope. And that formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That was the second formula that you learned. And we use this when we have the slope, but instead of the intercept, they give us a point that we plug in, right? And then we learned we can turn this back into this. So the third one that we're going to learn today is standard form, and this formula is ax plus by equals c. Alright, so this one's going to look pretty different than this one. Alright, now here are the rules. These are the rules that you have to follow to put it properly in standard form. There can be no fractions in the equation. Okay? Now, typically we have had the y by itself on the left side, right? But this one's different. We want the x and y together on the left side. Okay? And now the constant, the c for constant, this is all by itself on the right side. And then another big rule is the a. The a, the first number in front of the x, cannot be negative. The b can be negative, the c can be negative, but the a cannot be negative. Alright? So, here's how we would do this. Okay? Basically, 4 steps. And sometimes you got to do 4 steps, sometimes you can do less. It really depends on the problem. Alright, so let's do this first example together. Here we have y equals 2/3 x plus 4. Alright, so right now this is a slope-intercept. Y equals mx plus b. We're going to change it out of that into standard form. So, in order for us to do that, here's the steps. And if you go through these steps, it'll make all these rules true. Okay? So, our first step is to clear the fractions. That's meaning get rid of the fraction, get rid of the bottom number. And we get rid of the bottom number by multiplying by the least common denominator, which will typically just be the bottom number. Not always, but mostly. Okay? So, if I see that my fraction here is 2/3. So basically I need to get rid of that bottom number. Okay? And remember, fractions mean 2 divided by 3. So I'm always doing the opposite. The opposite of dividing by 3 is timesing by 3. So I'm going to times this fraction by 3. Okay? Now this is going to be the one thing that's a little different. Now the one thing that is the same is we always do it on both sides. So I'm going to have to time the y on this side by 3, right? But here's the other thing. I have to also times this term. When you multiply or divide, you've got to hit every term the same way. So in this case, we're going to divide everything by 3. Okay, but that step is guided by getting rid of that. That's why we're doing it. Okay, so if we do that, 3 times y, that's easy. That's just 3y. Okay, now here's 2 ways you can kind of do the fraction. First of all, I can just know that those will cancel out. Divided by 3 and times 3 cancel out, and I'm left with 2x. But if that's confusing to you, fall back to your calculator. It's 3 times 2/3. So watch, if I go to my calculator, and I do 3 times, and then put in your fraction, alpha y gives you the shortcut. Choose number 1, which is n over d, and then just type in the fraction, 2/3. You see it equals 2. Okay, so you can always use your calculator if the fractions confuse you. Okay, so 3 times 2/3 is 2, but it's got the x attached. And then it's plus 4 times 3 is 12. Alright, so now it looks a little better. I've gotten rid of the fraction. That's always step 1. If you see the fraction, get rid of that first. Now let's go to step 2. I need to get the x and y on the left side of the equation. So if we look here, the y is over here, but now I got to move this x. And this is just simple equations. How do I move this? I do the opposite. So I'm going to do minus 2x on this side, and I'm going to do minus 2x on this side. They're gone over here. Now remember, I'm not going to do 3y minus 2x. They're not like terms. That's a y term, that's an x term. So because I can't do it, I just write what it says. Negative 2x and this 3y is positive, so I'm going to put plus 3y, and that's going to equal, all that's left is 12. Okay? Alright, step 3. Get the constant term on the right side. Remember, the constant term is the term or the number that's by itself. It does not have a variable. Well, 12 is the number without a variable. That's the constant. It's already on the right side. So, see, I don't have to do that step. But then the final step, step 4, because it looks like we're done, right? But look carefully. We have to make sure a is not negative. Okay? If it is, we're going to switch all the signs. And here's how we're going to technically switch all the signs. Okay, so just like equations, if I have negative 2x, okay, I know how to get x by itself, but I don't want to move the 2. I just want to get rid of the negative. So I can just technically divide everything by a negative 1. That doesn't change the number, but the negative divided by a negative makes it positive. So the negative cancels out. So that makes this just positive 2x. Positive 3 divided by negative 1 is negative 3y equals 12 divided by negative 1 is negative 12. Alright, that's technically what you're doing, is dividing by negative. Okay, but like I said here, the shortcut, if I'm going to have to change the sign here, you'll notice every sign changes. So you can just do that as a shortcut, but this is the final answer in standard form. There's no fractions. My x and y are on the same side together. The constant's by itself over here, and the a is not negative. And that means you're good. That means you're done. Okay? So, here's what we're going to do here. We'll do some practice together. Okay? We'll do a little bit of practice together, and then I'll give you some answers to check. Alright? So, let's try number 1 here. 3y equals negative 5x plus 8. Alright, now you have the steps on your paper, but go through the steps. Soon you'll actually memorize them, because that's what you'll have to go through in your mind. Okay? Alright, 3y equals negative 5x plus 8. Step 1 says get rid of the fractions. There's no fractions here, so I get to skip step 1. Step 2 says get your x and y on the left side, so this I have to do. I'm going to move my negative 5x over here by doing the opposite, which is plus 5x. These cancel out. I'm left with a positive 5x plus 3y, and all that's left over here is 8. Step 3 is get the constant on the right side. That's there, so skip that. Step 4, make sure the a is not negative. The a is not negative, so you see it's not always so bad. This one only took one step. 5x plus 3y equals 8. That is in standard form. Okay? Alright, number 2. Okay, now we have y equals y equals 7x plus 3. Once again, step 1, get rid of your fractions. There is no fractions here, so skip it. Step 2, get the x and y together. So I'm going to move this over by doing minus 7x, which gives me negative 7x. This is a positive y, and that equals, all after that's gone, all that's left is 3. Step 3, get the constant on the right side. I don't have to move that. That one's already done. Alright, and now step 4, make sure the a is not negative. Here my a is negative 7. Can't have it negative. So technically we're dividing everything by negative 1. Shortcuts just switch all the signs. So this becomes positive 7x. This positive y becomes a negative y. And this 3 becomes a negative 3. So 7x minus 3y equals negative 3 is now the equation in slope-intercept form. Okay? So, we've done 2 together. Now I want you to try these 2 on your own. So pause this podcast, work on number 3 and 4, and then unpause it, and I'll have the answers up for you. Okay? Let's see if you get what I get. Alright, so here is the work and the final answers. Number 3 was only one step. There was no fractions to get rid of. The x and the y were actually already on the same side, so you didn't have to move that. But the step 3, we get the constant on the right side, so the one thing you had to move was the constant. You had to move the negative 7 over, and it became positive 7. That was it. The a wasn't negative. You're good to go here. Alright, now number 4. So step 1, there was no fractions to get rid of. Step 2, I did need to move my x over here, so that's why I got minus 3x. Constant is now on the right side, so I didn't have to do step 3. But then My a is negative. I can't have a negative 3, so I divide everything by negative 1, which means just switch every sign. So this is now positive 3x, this becomes a negative y, and now it's a positive 8. Okay? Alright, so now let's look at some examples where we will encounter some fractions. Okay, so here's 4. I'm going to do the 2 harder ones with you, and then you'll go back and finish the other 2 and check them. Okay, so I'm going to do with you number 6 and number 8. Okay, alright, so number 6 is negative 3/4 x plus 5/4, excuse me. So remember, step 1 is to get rid of the fractions, and here we see we have fractions, and I have 2 fractions. Remember the example we had 1 fractions? We can have more than 1, and that's okay. Here's what's nice about this. Both fractions have the same bottom number. So I'm going to multiply it by the bottom number in this case, right? And that'll cancel both of them out. Remember, when you do this, you're going to hit every term. So I'm going to times this by 4. I'm going to times this by 4. And I always times the other side too. That's going to cancel out all my fractions. Okay? So 4 times y is 4y equals. Now, remember, it's just going to cancel the bottom number automatically. But once again, you can always use the calculator. So if I do 4 times and it's a negative 3/4, 4 times, get your fraction, and we'll do negative 3 on the top, and then 4 on the bottom. Look what it's going to equal here. Negative 3. Right? So it's the same thing. So it'll be negative 3x. These numbers cancel, but just to show the calculator again, now it's 4 times, get our fraction here, 5/4, and that equals 5. Okay, so by multiplying everything by 4, we've gotten rid of the fractions. That's step 1. Okay, step 2, remember, move x and y to the same side, so I got to move this negative 3x over, so I do plus 3x. So now that gives me 3x plus 4y equals, the x's are gone here, 5. Step 3, move the constant to the right side. It's already here. Step 4, a cannot be negative. This is not, so I'm done. Okay? Alright, here's an unusual example that you won't see too much, but just in case you do. Alright, number 8, we have 3/2 x minus 4/3 y plus 5/6 equals 0. I got 3 fractions. It's okay. Now here's the thing. The one we just did had the same number on the bottom. Look at this. It does not have the same number on the bottom. Okay? So think of this is where it gets a little tricky. What am I going to multiply by? I need to find a magic number that will cancel everything out. Okay? If I multiply everything by 2, it'll cancel out the 2, but it won't cancel out the 3 and it won't cancel out the 6. Right? If I multiply everything by 3, it'll cancel out the 3, but not the 2 and the 6. But if I multiply everything by 6, it'll cancel out the 6 and the 2 and the 3. And here's why. This is kind of why this works. I'm just going to use the bottom number. But if I put 6 on top of 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. See? There's nothing on the bottom really. If I take 6 and put the bottom number 3 on the bottom, 6 divided by 3 is 2 over 1, which is just 2. So you see the 6 will cancel those out as well because they're all multiples of 6. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that then. So that's why we're going to multiply everything by 6. Okay? And because it's not the same number, you definitely would probably want to use your calculator here. Okay? So I'm going to do 6 times 3/2 first. 6 times 3/2. Oops. Oh, let me do that again. 6 times 3/2. And that's going to give us 9. So all of this simplifies to 9x. Now I'm going to do 6 times. That's a negative 4/3. So it's times 6 again. 6 times negative 4 over 3, and that gives us a negative 8. Alright, so that's minus 8. That's the y term. And then we got positive 5, 6 times 6. So let's do that. 6 times, forgot my alpha, I got messed up, 6 times 5 over 6, and that's going to equal 5. Okay? Alright, so that was a lot of work there, but now we've gotten rid of all the fractions. Okay? So now step 2, move the x and y to the same side. They're already on the same side, so I don't have to do that. Step 3, get the constant to the right side. So I need to move this 5 over. So the opposite of plus 5 is minus 5. Bring everything down. So now we got 9x minus 8y equals negative 5. Step 4, make sure the a is not negative. The a is not negative. Remember, it's okay the b is negative. It's okay the c is negative. So now we're done. Okay? So go back, try 5 and 7. So pause the podcast, give it a try, okay, and then unpause it to see the answers. Alright, so number 5, first step, there was only one fraction here, right? So I'm going to multiply by 3, but I got to hit everything. Then I get this, got to move the x over, so it's minus x or minus 1x. Once I get that, got to get rid of that negative in the front, so I divide everything by negative 1, which changes all the signs. So x minus 3y equals 12 is standard form for number 5. Okay, now number 7, got two fractions, different bottom number. If you multiply it by 4, it'll cancel them out, but hit everything by the 4, right? That gives you 3y equals 10x plus 28. Move the x over by doing minus 10x. No negative a, change the sign by dividing everything by negative 1. Final answer is 10x minus 3y equals negative 28. Okay? Alright, last two. This is going to kind of put everything you've done this chapter so far in one problem. Okay? So let's look what the directions ask us to do. Write the equation in point-slope form and then convert it to standard form. Okay, so we're going to kind of use all our points together. And once again, what you do always, once again, depends on what you start with. Look what they've given us. They've given us a point, negative 8, 3, and they've given us the slope. Remember, m equals slope. So I have to start with this formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay? So if I go back in here and if I plug in all my values, remember, on a point, x is the first number, y is the second number, right? So I'm going to do y minus 3 equals 2 is my slope, x minus negative 8. Remember, you can have that double negative. Be careful with your sign. Now before I go any further, remember, let's just change that double negative to a plus 8. Now it's going to be easier to solve. So first thing I'm going to do, technically I'm really going to put this in slope-intercept first. I'm going to simplify this. Okay? So first thing I have to do is distribute, no matter what. So here I have y minus 3 equals 2x plus 16. Okay? And so now just to make it look a little easier, I'm going to move that 3 over here by doing plus 3 so that my two constants just become one constant. So y equals 2x plus 19. Alright, so that's point slope. Now within slope-intercept, but remember, now they told us to make it all the way to standard. So I'm going to take this and make it to ax plus by equals c. That's what we've been doing on this podcast. First rule, no fractions. And there's none, so I don't have to do anything. Second step, move all x's and y's on the same side. So I got to move this here, so I'm going to do minus 2x. So now I got negative 2x plus y, and that will equal just 19. Step 3, constant on the right side, which it is, so skip that. And the last step, always double check your a cannot be negative. So once again, technically I'm dividing in my head everything by negative 1, which is just changing all the signs. So it's positive 2x minus y equals negative 19. So now I've gone from point slope all the way to standard. Okay? Alright, so one last practice. Pause it. Try number 10. and then unpause it and check your work and your answer. Alright, so for number 10, once you plug it into slope-intercept, you should have this. The key is x minus negative 1 turns to x plus 1. Okay? Once you distribute and then move your 4 over, you should have y equals negative 3x plus 1. That's slope-intercept. But remember, we're going to take it to standard form. So not much to do to make it standard form. There was no fractions. I just moved my x over, constants on the right side. After I do that, my a is already positive. So 3x plus y equals 1 is my final answer. Alright, so that's how we do standard form.